Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. My guest today, Rod McKuen, is a name that if one were to say, I hear America singing, it would be his songs, his words, that America is singing. He has written a new book of poetry called Intervals, published by Harper & Row. There is one spectacular poem about life after Tower Records, and we will be back after a short pause to talk to Rod McKuen. Welcome back. We're talking with Rod McKuen, poet, author of Intervals, published by Harper & Row. Welcome, Rod.
Thank you, Connie. Nice to be here as always.
And Intervals is almost, well, if anyone wanted to know what Rod McKuen's life is like and where you live, the first 10 pages, like an artist, you tell me in words and paint the picture of your home.
Well, I think it's out of guilt that I do this, and the last few books have been like that. I'm a lousy letter writer, and I don't return as many telephone calls as I should, and I think I might as well spend the introductory pages in sort of bringing friends up to date.
As well as I look at the cover of the book, and I started to think it is not unlike in reading the poetry, as if you were sort of illustrating for your life. Robert Frost's Two Roads Diverge in a Yellow Wood, and this is the road less traveled.
Well, in a way it is, and I'm at a point in my life where there are different roads I could take, and there are a lot of ideas and ideologies I might pursue or should pursue or whatever. And I guess the older I get, the more I realize that I should specialize. I never believed too much in specialization before, but the problem is that if you don't narrow down what it is you do, you end up not doing very many things very well. So I'm at a point now where I'm sort of deciding where I want to go. I haven't yet.
It's taking inventory is the feeling.
It is taking time to take inventory. I mean, I've been using this as an excuse now for a couple of years. I have to get off and move ahead, I think.
Well, speaking of taking that, then let me ask you to read about the lines that go on the page about time. And I said to you, because
I cannot fill every want, my needs are more. My wants are greater each time out. But I have nothing anymore I would not exchange or give away for a little more talent, a little more time, a little more sense of focus. Focus is a juncture where it all began to unravel. Legend says that Li Po tried while drinking in a boat one night to reach and grasp and hold the moon's reflection. At last he lost his balance, fell overboard and drowned. Any poet worth his words will tell you the moon on the lake is especially nice, in middle age or otherwise.
Moon and the lake and love. You left home at age 11, Rod. What happens to a person or an individual who isn't given love?
I think that in the beginning you probably don't know what you're missing, and then for a while you go off the deep end and try to seek it out. And in the end, you learn how to subsist with perhaps very little love, and how to make those moments into something probably greater than they were or are, so that those few moments of what you consider real love, you carry down a lifetime. I think those times when I can remember love at what I think might have been its best, I use over and over again to talk about love, or expound on it, or ask myself why it's different, or what it should be. Or I think it's the lack of love probably is more training ground and in self-subsistence than all the love in the world and all the affection.
When did love come back into your life then? After Korea? When you were on the radio? When did it start to fill you?
It was after Korea, and it was long after Korea. I think it was probably in the late 1950s, going into the 60s, where I began to feel as though I was not someone from another planet. Although throughout my life, the whole business of not having known who my father was and that sort of thing, I wasn't sure that I was deserving of love or deserving of any kind of affection. So sort of looking back, I guess, to analyze it. So that a lot of it came together in '76 when I did find my father. At least I knew that I hadn't been dropped from some alien star or something. And so that was a sort of a settling in. But I'm not sure anybody really has that idealistic form of love, or that we even know what love is and appreciate it at the time. You can only look back and say, gee, I wish I'd have been better, you know, I wish I'd been a better human being, and I wish I'd have known what I was getting into, or I wish I'd realized how much I was being loved. All of us make all those excuses about, you know, gee, he or she went away, and look how miserable I am, or whatever. But during the time, you don't think about how miserable you are. And I think the greatest expression of love is when you're not even thinking about it, when all you're thinking to yourself is, how can I give something back? And that's probably the best love and the best expression of love you'll ever have, is when you don't realize how much is being given to you.
There's a little bit of that in that poem about where she has gone away and you're talking in the kitchen. But you talk about also, this is the lines that I love about being occupied and taking inventory, and the fact of the demands that are made on you because of success.
Well, I don't know if we make the demands on ourselves or what, but this is out of my life. I failed to write another letter. Let one more deadline pass. 500 words on Barenboim's 6-disc survey of Mozart sonatas. I start another lengthy list of things undone that once set down will be forgotten. File from one high stack of papers to another. And it goes on about things such as putting aside Christmas cards. You know, I do that with friends. I feel that there are those cards I want to say something special in, and I put them aside and never get around to writing that something special. And so the friends that should have Christmas cards don't get them.
But they get them at Easter or some other time, as I
recall. If they get them, or 2 years later or whatever.
Rod, also in the book is a coming to terms, I would say, with recognizing mortality. And that was the last stanza of this poem.
This was written to a friend of mine who died. In fact, it was a friend who died of AIDS, and he was an agent, one of the first agents I ever had, and I had not seen him for years and years. And I thought to myself, what a terrible loss it was for me, because I had not bothered to keep track of him or whatever. And so I wrote this poem about all the various people dying that I would like to have known or whatever.
But it's
and
that last stanza
in the end,
that is so really universal for anyone who's lost someone.
The end of every day leaves something, if only promise of another. Even gates now rusted shut. Keep yards behind them safe. Imagine what might not have been if those we love had never been. Which is true.
That's the line. I mean, it has a Shakespearean sort of feel of a sonnet. Do you read Shakespeare at all?
I do, and more I read the classics, because there is such strength in the classics and such real sustenance. We were talking about that before we came on the air. I don't find an awful lot of interesting things in modern fiction. Probably because I'm a news freak. I read too many newspapers and I watch too many television news programs, and if something is happening in the country or whatever, then I'm with my television zapper, I'm switching around and checking on every aspect of it, and in the end, the news is so diluted that I suppose you're oversaturated. I'd like to wean myself from that if I can, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, it is the hypnotic, because you're asking yourself, what is truth? And it's almost as if you, the observer, is going to glean what is that truth, and you really never.
You never do.
Tower Records, Life After Tower Records, is a major part of this book, Intervals. For anyone who has not visited Los Angeles or gone to that corner of Holloway
or the other
and
60
Sunset,
or 70 that are around the country.
But there's something special about that one place. It is the meeting point of anyone involved at any generation with music.
It really is. I mean, there are two of them. One side is the classical tower, which is a sort of a hangout of mine. We have a joke about it. Wade Alexander, my manager, says he can call me there because it's my office. Because I make so many trips back and forth there. If a new record is coming out, I'm there to get it. And all the people who are in that tower and some of the various other ones are like family to me. They keep me advised. They call me on the phone, tell me when new CD's coming out or when they expect to elect the latest ship of
Are
Polygram
you
or whatever.
recognized when you go in there, Rod? And are you disturbed when they
No, I'm recognized
recognize
in a much more serious way because
Yeah.
in a more friendly way. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, to give you an idea, when I see John Ashbery when I go to New York a lot, John and I never talk about poetry. We talk about trashy movies, or we talk about classical music, but never poetry. When I'm at Tower, I can talk about music, which is really the main interest in my life, over poetry, over anything. I mean, I can't live without music. I mean, I would love to someday be able to write. I don't know of anyone who has written a line of words, strung a line of words together, from Shakespeare to Walt Whitman, to George Sand, to anybody, you name it, that could compare with 2 or 3 bars of music. I mean, music has the power to hypnotize, to placate. It has the power for you to conjure up things in your own imagination that don't necessarily need words. So writing words all my life has been a struggle to try to, I only realized this in late life, that to try to make up for my inability to really write anything as good as a bar or two, 6 or 8 or 12 or 124, whatever, music. Music is really the universal language. It needs no translation. It needs no accent. It can be mauled. It can be misappropriated. It can have its chords juxtaposed, whatever, and still it's not as bad for the wear and tear as words are under the same circumstance.
Rod, we're going to take a short pause. When we come back, self-educated, who helped you and who was a mentor to you in music, and how old were you before you could appreciate Bach? We will be back after a short pause with our guest, Rod McKuen, author of Intervals, published by Harper & Row. Welcome back. We're talking with Rod McKuen, poet, author of Intervals, published by Harper & Row. Rod, before the break, I asked you, who was sort of a mentor to you in music, and how long did it take you to appreciate maybe the pristine clearness of a Bach cantata or Brandenburg concerto?
Well, you know, all my life, in the young years, I think the music I could understand best was the music that influenced me. I was heavily influenced by the Russian Romantic composers. Yeah. Not so much Tchaikovsky as Borodin and Rachmaninoff, and not so much Rimsky-Korsakov, perhaps as Scriabin.
But how old were you, and do you remember where you were when you suddenly said to someone next to you, "What is that? That's something I never heard before," and knew that connection in your brain?
I think I must have been, in the beginning, perhaps it was American folk songs that I got onto. But the first time I found classical music that I really liked, I think somewhere on the radio I heard Borodin's "In the Steppes of Central Asia," the Russian Easter Overture. And those were the first compositions I thought of as being something I was able to understand, because they had great melodic content. Yeah. And it was only later that I realized just how deep they were, and what the counter melodies brought to them, and how unusual they were if you took into account the arrangements and things. But it was that kind of music because it was such a broad canvas. And later, of course, when I traveled to Russia and spent nearly a year working there, I was able to meet many modern Russian composers and go to places where Rachmaninoff had written and where he performed. And I think my great hero is Rachmaninoff. The other day I bought an album, and it was a wonderful cover on the album. I don't know why somebody hadn't used it before. It's a black and white photograph of Rachmaninoff with the Russian flag on one side and the American flag on the other. It was draped so beautifully. And I think that all of his adult life when he was younger, well enough, was trying to escape Russia, and modern Russia anyway, as most Russians were of that period. And then the rest of his life he spent trying to get back to it, or at least to his Russian roots.
Did you watch the Vladimir Horowitz in
Oh, I
Russia?
did.
I mean, I have
indeed.
taped that, and it's something I have
It's
treasured
wonderful.
because
And I watched the repeat
Yeah.
of it. They did a repeat of it.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, I always watch, even if I hadn't known about that show, I've been watching Charles Corral. I never missed that show Sunday morning. It's one of the must shows for me.
Speaking of, though, ballet art, let me go back to Tower Records and tell our friends in the audience that in that poem, because I think it should end up being a ballet, or you should put it to music, Rod. It is counterpoint of the jazz, the bop, the rock, and there is the other owl with the classical and the Beverly Sills and the Sutherland and other sort of composers whose names I have to tell you I did not recognize in my ignorance. But it is that whole feel of the diversity of people attracted to the word music.
Well, that was the whole point. And in fact, throughout this book, you'll find that there's almost no poems that don't have some kind of invisible metronome going, some kind of counterpoint. And that was what I wanted with Tower Records. Tower Records ought to be an orchestration, ought to be a rich orchestration.
This is from Tower Records.
Yes, it is. This is describing the crowds. See them move between the aisles, pathways so narrow that passing past another is bold adventure, thrilling, drawing in of breath and stomach. In between the aisles, the islands back to back that hide the million dreams inside bright jackets, well-turned sleeves, plastic fused so fast it must be cut apart to reach the shiny metal hopes, the deep dark vinyl of delight, whose inner grooves can only be decoded by the diamond needle, narrow beam of laser light. And it goes on to talk about Gershwin and Hildegard of Bingham. And
okay, that's a name I didn't know, Hildegard of Bingham.
Hildegard of Bingham is back to antiquity. She wrote masses and some of her motets. In fact, one of her pieces of music was recorded last year and became Gramophone's, which is English Publications Record of the Year. It's a learning experience to go to a record store, even though I have thousands and thousands of records at home myself. I still am always on the lookout for something new. Somebody asked me the other day what field of music I specialized in, and I gave an answer off the top of my head, but it was off the top of my head because I really don't specialize. I like all kinds of music. There's only two kinds of music.
Good and bad.
Good and bad, that's true.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else.
Rod, you achieved success very early in life, and almost you had the American dream, or what is conceived of...
American nightmare.
Okay, tell me about choices of nightmares.
Well, I think that you don't have choices after a while. You think you're so ready for what the world terms success, and you're not. You're not equipped to deal with the amount of money it brings in. You're not equipped to deal with the choices that you're given. I think no matter what choices you make the wrong ones. You think you surround yourself with people who can make good decisions for you, and in a way you're surrounding yourself with people who can put other people off. Mm-hmm. And you don't realize that, and you also don't let their talents come to the fore, and you don't let them do what they do best. Instead, they give you a false sense of security by doing what it is they think you want most, and I think that's bad for you and certainly bad for them. It's very difficult to go back and reevaluate, but I think all your life you try to get back to that pristine time when you were only creating, when you weren't not just crawling toward Bethlehem, but slouching toward liberation in a way. And success, or what everybody else terms success, is
it a narcotic? I mean,
you
get hooked on
it's not so much a narcotic.
Yourself.
It's not so much a narcotic as it is a maze whose center you never really can get out of. And you fight all your life to get out of that. Yet you would never be happy if you did get out of it. I mean, you wouldn't want to be a lonely voice crying in the wilderness. You do have things you want to say, and it would be terrible if they fell on deaf ears. But you certainly don't want to be predictable or have to say them the way a publisher wants to, or the way a sales force says you should. And it's a trap. Success is a big, big trap. but I certainly prefer it to obscurity.
And on that, Rod, we're going to take a short pause, and we will be back with our guest, Rod McKuen, author of Intervals, published by Harper & Row. Welcome back, Rod McKuen, Intervals. Rod, you said the ability to say what you want to say. Does the poet, the artist in America, have a moral obligation to right the wrong?
I think everyone who communicates does. I mean, I don't like to. I mean, it's true. You have to be in slots, and you're a poet, or you're a composer, you're a musician, you're a singer, whatever you may be, or maybe a little bit of all those. But communication is really the thing. And if you've been blessed with any kind of talent at all, you have to try to work to perfect that all your life. You probably never will, but it's still good to strive to be better. And also, I think, particularly in poetry, if you look at the poets who have done anything lasting or done anything that means anything, they have continued to redefine the time they're passing through, juxtaposed to their own life, and they put that down as some sort of a roadmap. And I think that it's very important to do that. In doing so, you might make it easier for just one other person or whatever, and that wouldn't be bad, I think. I don't think you can right all the wrongs, but you must address those things, because whatever else it does, selling X number of books or having people sing your songs or come to your concerts, does give you the ability to have a voice, and you misuse that if you don't try very hard to address yourself, not just to social injustice, but a lot of hidden injustices that are going around, things that that make it possible for people with a big voice to be heard above, say, the simple voice who's struggling and trying to say something and may not have a way of saying it yet. The whole idea, and we talked about this the other night when you and I did something at UCLA, the whole idea of trying to not just address, as I said before, social ills, but to talk about the sociology behind it, the idea of a society that has invented a longer life and yet has never addressed what we should be doing with those extra hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be in video arcades, and it shouldn't be in old folks' homes unless we're surrounded by all kinds of people. I can't imagine putting old people out to pasture. I can't imagine not having daycare centers in factories and office buildings and things where women work. It's not enough that women should be given some kind of liberation. If they, in addition to that, have to go home and cook the meals and they want to, mm-hmm. and also take care of the children, it seems to me there'd be a better quality of life if there was a way of not just the state, but big business and everybody taking on some of those burdens. I don't have the answers, but I do think that all of us have to share in the idea of making life a little bit better, a little more of a straighter line between here and there, instead of so many detours. And there are so many detours in modern life. I mean, there's so much between the parking meter and traffic. There is so much in so many places for you to lose your way.
Yeah, that's your expression, bed, sitting, and chair, I believe.
Yes, the bed, sitting, chair, and the chair.
Yeah.
It's...
what page is that on? Do you?
Gosh, I don't know.
Yeah, because if we could just read a little bit of that, it made a point. I think it's right in the beginning. By the way,
talk among yourself.
Yeah. No, I'm going to tell them that not only did you write the poetry in this book, but you did the illustrations that are lovely.
Well, I would have been an artist if I ever had a place to keep an easel up. I always regret that I haven't not become a better painter.
Listen, Rod, you were on the road so long. Who brought conformity or who domesticated Rod McKuen?
Well, I don't think this animal's ever been domesticated, but you do learn form after a while. Form is something no one can teach you. You learn form by realizing there's a form in everything. Morning, afternoon, and evening.
Yeah.
Birth, life, death. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Everything has not just its season, but its time. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Grandfather, father, and sons.
Yeah, from generation.
Daughters, granddaughter. It's not just the generations. It's nature supplying it. It's whatever religion you believe in supplying it. There should be a form in a speech. I mean, there's got to be sentences must not be left up in the air. Stories must have an opening, a premise, a way of getting there, a way of getting back. It's why things like drugs and alcohol don't really work very well in the creative life. I mean, you need to have a springboard into some kind of imagination, but once you get out there, you have to have the means of getting back.
Rod, there's a beginning and a middle and an end
And
to all things. And unfortunately, we have come to the end. Will you come back another time?
As always, Connie, you make it a pleasure. And I must tell those people who are viewing out there that you're in your 5th anniversary. You've been doing shows for 5 years. I sometimes feel like I should be interviewing you. You've got a daughter who's studying at UCLA. You have a husband who's a director and a producer. And you're into all kinds of things. You have a newspaper column, a radio show, a television show.
You should be my
we
PR person.
We can spend an hour or two on you
Rod,
easily.
Will you autograph my book?
And
if you'd like a copy of our publication, write to me or look for our column in Beverly Hills Today or the other 8 Today papers. And meanwhile, support your local library.
Amen.
And go in and take out some of the other Rod McKuen books, like Suspension Bridge, which has one of the loveliest poets. It has lived with me about the farmer and his 2 sons, which Rod knows I have talked about, as well as Another Beautiful Day, The Records, as well as another book, Susan Parr's book, The Moral Behind the Story. It is a superb book on how to read a book and what are some of the questions you can ask. Also about, as I said to Rod, the American dream. Reading Gatsby, you find out there is a fallacy to the American dream, as well as in your financial section of the newspapers. Where does it go wrong? Just some of the books we've liked recently. See you next week, and don't miss Intervals. It'll enrich your life. Rod, thank you so much.
Thank you again.